Thank you, Reva. Over to you for your drosha.
Thank you, Marion. As I've already said, we start our drosha this year, or this moment, sorry, we start our drosha at this time this year with a short video of the daughter of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. Back to you, Jacob.
Perhaps the most defining feature of my father's life, one that I don't think I fully appreciated until after he died, was that he learned and continued to learn every single day until his last. He learned from books, from text, from laws, he learned from history and from world events, but mainly he learned from people. He would seek out people to learn from every possible path of life, and he would seek out what he could learn from everyone he met. And he would do this through conversation, through talking and listening. So for him, conversation was a defining and spiritual act, a way of opening ourselves up to something beyond ourselves, of being challenged, the only way we could really become more than we were before, a training perhaps for opening ourselves up to God. In this coming week's parasha, Chayei Sarah, we read that before meeting his future wife for the first time, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach b'sadeh lifnot arav, Yitzchak had gone out in the field before evening to meditate. The Talmud in Brachot, commenting on the choice of the word lasuach, usually meaning to talk or to converse, states, Ein sicha ela tefillah. There is no conversation without prayer. Or, as my father explains it, conversation is a form of prayer. He writes on this parasha, conversation is a prayer, for in true conversation I open myself up to the reality of another person. I enter his or her world. I begin to see things from a perspective not my own. A genuine, human conversation is a preparation for and a microcosmic version of the act of prayer. Prayer, the prayer model by Yitzchak specifically, is not monologue, but dialogue. Prayer as sicha, conversation. So it is fitting that through this initiative, communities in conversation, all over the world, individuals, communities and organizations will mark my father's yahrzeit, not simply from learning from what he wrote, but through conversation, coming together, asking, challenging, listening, and learning from each other. It means more than I can say to us, his family, that you are helping to carry forward his teaching in this beautiful way. He wrote of Moshe's death at the end of the Torah, "We will not complete the journey. Therefore, we each must inspire others to continue what we began." Thank you for continuing the work my father began. And may the work he began be a blessing for all of us.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for sharing that. And before I give the drosha now, which is based on a drosha that Jonathan Sacks actually wrote. Before his passing, he had completed all his droshas for the entire year. And it is so prophetic. What an amazing man, what an amazing mind. As we heard last night, the kindness that he expressed, and to just go back to his daughter's words, what is our lives worth? It can be of service and share and build each other. And as his daughter said, every conversation that we have, be it between members of my committee, be it between people in your business, be it between different political parties here, we should listen to each other. We should always look for the good in the other, even though we disagree about things. And look what we have in common. I'm going to read to you just a few short paragraphs inspired and written by Rabbi Sachs. And he was talking about the value of people's lives. And he's called it a journey of 1,000 miles. Why Abraham and Sarah died at peace despite their tumultuous lives. You heard we started with Sarah lived to be 127 years old. These were the years of Sarah. Now, the rabbis have discussed why repeat these are the years of Sarah's life. Isn't that superfluous? But Rashi, one of our great sages that we all quote, and here Rabbi Sachs quotes him, said no. The first, Sarah lived to 127 years old, tells us about the quantity of her life. The second phrase, the years, these were the years of Sarah's life, is deliberately repeated to the quality of her. She lived in goodness, in spite of mistakes. So, and let us look at Abraham and Sarah's lives. Look at the unbelievable sadness and difficulties they went through. There was the agony of waiting so many years for their own child. There was then the agony of the binding of Isaac. Abraham was faced with the prospect of losing the most precious person in the world to him, apart from Sarah, the child he had waited for so long. One way or the other, neither Abraham nor Sarah had an easy. Theirs were lives of trial, in which their faith was tested in many ways. Just as you and I and every human being, we have great trials, small trials in our lives. So, yet, in relation to what Hashem told him, Hashem promised Abraham two things. Number one, he would be a father of a nation. He would have his own land. And number two, that those nations would endure throughout the generations. And yet, Hashem says to Abraham, I'm going to make your offspring like the dust. And yet, he had one child with Sarah, and that was Isaac. And yet, he had faith in the promise of Hashem. He saw the land that he was to own, and yet he still bought the Machpelah plot and that field as the first sign of his faith of what God had promised him. He did whatever he had to because he had faith in that promise, even though it wasn't there right now. So both Abraham and Sarah, and I love Lord Jonathan Sachs for saying this, he said that he had waited so long for a son, and the Orthodox interpretation is that Sarah laughed because she didn't believe. Yeah, Rabbi Sachs says both Abraham and Sarah laughed when the three men, angels, men sent by, told them that Sarah would have a son. And of course, both of them laughed. We could say they laughed in disbelief or they laughed in joy. That's left open to our interpretation. It could have been a sarcastic laugh. We don't believe that, but it's up to you. So because they laughed, the son was called Isaac Yitzhak, which is laughter. So whatever trials Sarah and Abraham faced in their, whatever mistakes they may have made or not, Hashem and our Torah tells us to see the best, to see that love than as disbelief, because above all, they had faith. Abraham did not need to see all the land in Jewish hands, as I said, nor did he need to see the Jewish people becoming numerous. He had faith in that vision, in that word, in that understanding. He took the first step. And what were Abraham's steps to the promised fulfillment of a great nation? And in fact, it says the father of many nations. And there is a reason why Abraham is the father of three great religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It is all for a purpose. So, but he took the first step. He knew he had begun the task because he had faith in the same was the truth of Sarah. She believed, she had faith. Maybe she didn't understand, but it was with good interest that she asked Abraham to have a child with Hagar. And it was perhaps human or perhaps divine, we don't know, but she sent Hagar away. And as we know, Hashem looked after Hagar. And there's a reason why we have different nations. But to conclude with Rabbi Jonathan Sacks's understanding and viewpoint, and why he is one of my main mentors, to place your life in God's hand, to have faith that whatever happens to you happens for a reason, to know that you're part of a larger narrative, and to know that others following you will continue what you have begun. That is truly what we mean when we say it is not your task to finish the work, but it is your task to continue it. That mainly refers not only to our daily task today of goodness, perhaps in tzedakah to helping others, but generation to generation. A journey per mile, a journey of 1,000 miles, and this is what rabbis quoted, saying I love starts with one step. I hope you can hear me. I know it's unstable, the connection. So to Rabbi Sacks, the saying of that journey that begins with one, from that great Chinese philosopher, a journey of 1,000 miles, also is the saying, your task to complete, but it is your task to continue with that which Hashem has sent into your heart to do. Because what Abraham is referring to, and this Chayei Sarah Rosha is talking about from generation to generation. And deeds that you have done, those with us today, both to Jews and specifically as well to non-Jews, to the kind word to the beggar, to the kind word to someone of a different faith, a different religion, to a kind word about our future in this country. As we saw last night, one kind word to a little black boy in a white neighborhood where everyone ignored them, and one white woman welcomed them and brought him food, led him as a professor of Yale to write a book on the Jewish chesed, the Jewish kindness that is passed from generation to generation. So to have done what you were called on to do, to have made a beginning, and then to have passed on the to the next generation. The righteous, even in death, are regarded as though they were still alive. And that is from Berekot 18a, because the righteous leave a living trace in those who come after them. And I'm reading to you Rabbi Sachs's word. That was enough for Abraham and Sarah. For Abraham, one plot of land and one son was enough. And so was that for Sarah. And so it must be for us. Shabbat Shalom. Back